I. The Supreme Court. Among those curious corners of London life which anyone may go to see. But nobody does, one of the most curious, and, for about 5 minutes. Interesting, is the House of Lords sitting as the Supreme Court of Appeal. It is one of the ordinary things which go on and on unnoticed. For a lifetime, because they have gone on so long, till one day one begins to think about them and realizes suddenly that they were really extraordinary all the time, just as one pronounces sometimes with a startling sense of its absurdity some common English word. But no sightseer, no student of our institutions, and particularly no one who is interested in the ways and customs of individual trades, should fail to visit the Supreme Appellate Tribunal of this great country. The funny thing about the House of Lords sitting as a court is that it actually sits in the House of Lords. Entering the great red chamber as anybody may do if he can find the way, one receives the impression that it is perfectly empty, save for the knot of barristers, clerks, solicitors, clerks, pressmen, and casual onlookers who are huddled round the entrance. Beyond them are miles, and miles, and miles of red leather benches, silent, mournful, untenanted, dead. But no. A low, monotonous drone reaches you like the voice of a priest intoning at the other end of a cathedral. Guided by this sound, you discover faint traces of life on one of the vast red benches. There is an old man sitting on the bench, a pleasant, bearded old man. He does not look at all legal, and he is dressed in everyday clothes, huddled up in front of a sort of small card table covered with huge tomes. He is speaking apparently into space in a kind of squeaky hum, if you can imagine the sound, fumbling all the time with the large brown tomes. Look again. Beyond him, a very long way off, is another old man, a very, very jolly old man, with another beard, another card table, and more tomes. He is staring with profundity at the bench opposite. Following his gaze, you detect with amazement another old man, all alone on the great red bench. No, not alone. With something of the sensations of a man who stands by a stagnant pond or looks at a drop of drinking water through a microscope to discover that it is teeming with life. You detect yet a fourth old man on the very same bench, though, of course, a long way away. Both of them are equipped as the others, though one of them, for some reason which does not appear, has no beard. You are ready for anything now, so quite quickly you find the fifth old man, far, far away in the distance, all alone on an island. In the emptiness, so far off that he seems to be cut off from all communication with the other old men, or anyone else. Yet suddenly his lips move, and it is seen that he is speaking. He is the presiding old man, and he begins speaking while the first old man is still droning. From the faint movement of his head and the far gleam of his eyes you draw the conclusion that he is speaking to some living creature in your own neighborhood, and, sure enough, you find that close to you, but curtained off, there are 7 or 8 men shut up in a wooden pen, about 7 feet square. These must be the prisoners, and that is the dock, you think. But no, it is the barristers, as the House of Lords is very holy. They are only allowed to huddle on the doorstep. One of them is standing in front of the pen at a sort of lectern, wearing a big wig, the special House of Lords wig, and waiting patiently till the old men have stopped squeaking. Most of the other men in the pen are asleep, but 2 of them are crouching intently behind the other one, and they keep tugging at his gown, or poking him in the back, and whispering suggestions at him. When they do this, he whispers back with an aspect of calm degree, "Yes, yes, I follow, plus or minus," but you know he does not follow, and you know he is really in a great rage, because he is trying to hear with the other ear what the old man is saying, and the old man is so far away and his voice is so gentle, and his sentences are so long and so full of parentheses, very often in Latin, that it is hard enough to have to follow him, without being whispered at from the rear. At last the old man shuts his mouth very firmly in a legal manner, and it is clear that he has stopped speaking. It is the barrister's turn. He starts off with a huge sentence about degree the presumption of intent. Under the Drains and Mortgages, Consolidation, Act, 1892, plus or minus, but when he is right in the middle of it, the fourth old man, whom everybody supposed to be fast asleep, wakes up and asks the barrister an awkward question about the amending Act of 1899, just to show that he has got a grip of the whole thing. The barrister has not the faintest idea what the answer is, but he begins one immediately, as if it was quite easy. For that is the game. While he is groping about in the middle of a huge remark which means nothing at present but may very likely lead him to the right answer in the end, the third old man, in order to confuse the barrister, makes an interjection which he pretends is on the same point, but is really on a totally different point, which the barrister did not propose to deal with for days and days to come. When I say degree interjection, plus or minus, I mean that he delivers extremely slowly a sentence of inconceivable duration, a sentence so long that it seems really as if it would never end. Finally, the presiding old man decides that it is time it did end, so he interrupts rather testily. Then all the old men frankly abandon the pretense that the barrister has got anything to do with it, and they just argue quietly with each other across the vast red spaces. Meanwhile, the poor men in the pen try to stretch their legs, and mutter fiercely at each other. 4 or 5 of them are immensely distinguished K.C.S., earning thousands and thousands a year, the very first men in their profession. Yet they tamely submit to being confined in a tiny space where there is no room for their papers or their tomes, let alone their legs, for days and days and sometimes weeks, with the whole of the House of Lords empty in front of them, except for the 5 old men who spend the day badgering them at ease from comfortable sofas. To argue a case in the House of Lords must be one of the severest strains to which middle-aged men are ever subjected. It requires tremendous qualities of concentration and patience and intellectual quickness, not to speak of the labor of preparing the cases beforehand. At 1:30, when they have endured this for 3 hours, they dash out to lunch. They are lucky if they get anything to eat before 20 minutes to 2, but at 2, presumably because the House of Lords is required for legislative purposes, when they have done with it, they have to dash back to the pen again, where digestion must be quite impossible, even if you are not required to argue with the old men. No manual laborer in the world would tolerate such conditions for a day. Either he would break out of the pen and put up his feet on the red benches, or, very sensibly, he would insist that the House of Lords, when sitting as a court, must sit in a place which was suitable for a court, if it was only a committee room in the upper purlieus of the House. I cannot imagine why the barristers do not say that. It is not as if there was any impressive pomp or ceremony connected with this archaic survival. If there were, it might be worth it. But nothing could be less impressive than these old men mumbling desolately in everyday clothes and beards at rows and rows of empty red sofas. I am told that when the Lord Chancellor presides he does wear robes, but the other lords still wear mufti. That must be a great sight, but not, I should think, extravagantly solemn. But perhaps that is the real secret of the British Constitution, our capacity to extract solemnity from the incongruous or the merely dull. I once heard the House of Lords deliver judgment after days and days of argument in a case of the highest constitutional importance, involving the rights of the Crown, and what remain of the rights of the subject. All England was waiting with real interest for the issue. One by one the old men read out their long opinions of great profundity and learning and care, opinions of the greatest judges in the land, universally and rightly respected, opinions that will be quoted in every history and textbook, in every constitutional case, for hundreds of years to come. It took nearly a day to read them. While they were being read, the old men who were not reading, the barristers, the odd dozen of degree the public, plus or minus the clerks, everybody sat or stood in a sort of coma of stupefied boredom, gazing at nothing. No one stirred. Only, very far away, the gentle voice of the old man might have been heard rolling up to the roof, and squeaking about in the corners, and buzzing about like a sleepy bee under the benches, and always with a faint note of querulous amazement, as if the old man could not believe that anyone was listening to what he was saying. And he was right, for nobody was. We are a marvelous nation. Little bits of London,